The massive alien ship floated silently in the darkness beyond Neptune, invisible to human telescopes. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge, his 6 eyes studying the blue dot that was Earth. For 3,000 years, his people had watched this small planet and the strange creatures living on it. Another report, Admiral, his aide said, handing him a glowing data pad. Vextar read through it quickly. The humans were still building their little rockets and sending messages through space using radio waves. They had no idea that hundreds of alien species were watching them from the shadows. Still primitive, Vextar muttered. They won't reach the stars for another 2,000 years if they're lucky. Down on Earth, Commander Jinwoo was working late in his office at the International Space Coalition. He was reviewing plans for the next Mars mission when his computer screen flickered. For just a moment, strange symbols appeared, symbols that looked nothing like any human language. Then they were gone. Jinwoo rubbed his eyes. He had been working too hard lately. But something felt wrong. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Ariam, the head of Earth's Quantum Research Division. Ariam, did you notice anything strange with the quantum computers tonight? He asked. There was silence on the other end. Then Ariam spoke quietly. Jinwoo, we need to talk. Not over the phone. Meet me at the lab in 1 hour. Meanwhile, on the moon, Captain Miho was supervising the mining operations when all the equipment suddenly stopped working. The quantum processors that controlled the mining robots had shut down for exactly 17 seconds. When they came back online, they were working perfectly, too perfectly. They were now running at efficiency levels that should have been impossible. Back in space, Dr. Sora, the alien scientist in charge of studying Earth, was staring at her instruments in shock. Something impossible had just happened. 17 different star systems had received the same quantum message at exactly the same time. This was faster-than-light communication, something humans shouldn't be able to do for another 1,000 years. This can't be right, she whispered. The readings must be wrong. But the readings were not wrong. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations were all reporting the same thing. Humanity had just announced itself to the universe in a way that should have been impossible. On Earth, Dr. Ariam met with Commander Jinwoo in her secret laboratory hidden deep underground. The walls were covered with equations that looked nothing like human mathematics. Strange devices hummed quietly in the corners. They know we're here, Ariam said simply. Jinwoo sat down heavily. How long have we been ready? 200 years, Ariam replied. Ever since Hannah and Kyung first detected their monitoring stations. We've been preparing for this moment ever since. And the others? Are they ready too? Ariam nodded. Miho knows. So does everyone else in the inner circle. We've been building and learning in secret while they watched us play with rockets. High above Earth, Admiral Vextar was frantically calling an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 847 different alien species gathered in the great space station that orbited at the center of the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects, others were made of living crystal, and some were just clouds of gas that somehow could think. The humans have done something impossible, Vextar announced to the crowded assembly. They have achieved faster-than-light communication without any warning signs. A creature that looked like a walking tree spoke up. Perhaps their equipment malfunctioned. Young species often have accidents. This was no accident, Dr. Sora said, projecting the data for everyone to see. The quantum signatures are too clean, too perfect. This was planned. A representative from the warlike Krex Empire laughed. Impossible. We've been watching them. They're barely out of their caves. They still fight wars with explosive chemicals. But Vextar was studying the data more carefully. Something bothered him about the human signals. They weren't just faster than light, they were using quantum principles that the galaxy's best scientists hadn't discovered yet. Back on Earth, Hannah and Kyung stood in a hidden facility that looked more like something from a science fiction movie than anything humans were supposed to have. Massive screens showed star maps of the entire galaxy. Quantum computers calculated possibilities that existed in 17 dimensions at once. The signal has been sent, Hannah announced. They know we're here now. Kyung smiled. After 200 years of pretending to be primitive, it feels good to finally drop the act. They had learned so much by watching the Watchers. While the aliens thought they were hidden, human scientists had been studying their technology, learning their languages, and understanding their politics. Earth's greatest minds had been working in secret, developing technologies that went far beyond what the galaxy thought possible. Do you think they'll be angry? Hannah asked. Probably, Kyung replied. No one likes to discover they've been outsmarted for centuries. In the Galactic Council chamber, the debate was growing heated. Some wanted to make contact with humanity immediately. Others wanted to increase surveillance to figure out how humans had hidden such advanced technology. A few suggested that humanity might be dangerous. But Admiral Vextar was beginning to understand the truth. The humans hadn't suddenly developed impossible technology. They had been developing it for centuries right under the galaxy's nose. While everyone thought they were watching primitive creatures learn to use fire and metal, they had actually been watching the birth of something far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The Watchers had been watching. But the humans had been watching back. Captain Deho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Unity, watching the massive alien fleet through the main view screen. 23 days had passed since Earth sent its first real message to the galaxy. Now, hundreds of alien ships floated in formation at the edge of known space, waiting. "They're not moving," his navigation officer reported. "They're just watching us." Deho smiled. The aliens were probably confused. They had expected primitive human rockets with chemical engines, maybe fusion drives if humanity was lucky. Instead, they were looking at ships that moved by bending space itself. The Unity didn't fly through space. It folded reality around itself and stepped from one location to another. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving thousands of signals from the alien fleet. Different languages, different frequencies. They're all trying to establish first contact protocols." "Ignore them for now," Deho said calmly. "Wait for Ambassador Yuna's signal." Deep inside the largest alien ship, Admiral Vextar was panicking. His instruments couldn't properly scan the human vessels. Every time his sensors tried to lock onto them, the readings made no sense. The ships seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. "How are they moving?" Dr. Sora asked, staring at her readings. "There are no engine signatures, no energy trails. They're just appearing in different locations." "And how many ships are there?" Vextar demanded. "That's the problem, sir. Sometimes I count 50 ships. Sometimes I count 500. Sometimes the same ship appears to be in 3 different places at once." Before Vextar could respond, something impossible happened. A human woman simply appeared on his bridge as if she had been there all along. His security systems hadn't detected any transport beam, no matter transmission, nothing. She was just suddenly there. "Greetings," the woman said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Ambassador Yuna of Earth. I hope you don't mind me dropping by." The bridge erupted in chaos. Security guards raised their weapons, alarms blared, and officers shouted orders in a dozen different languages. But Yuna stood calmly in the center of it all, completely relaxed. "Please," she said, and somehow her voice carried over all the noise. "There's no need for alarm. I'm here to talk." Admiral Vextar raised his hand, and slowly the bridge became quiet. He had never seen technology like this. Humans weren't supposed to have matter transmission. Even the most advanced species in the galaxy could barely manage crude teleportation over short distances. "How?" was all he could manage to say. "Oh, that's quite simple," Yuna replied cheerfully. "I didn't actually teleport. I've been here the whole time. I just convinced your perception that I wasn't and then stopped doing so. Reality is much more flexible than most people think." Behind her, another human appeared, this time a young man carrying what looked like a small device. "Ambassador," he said, "I've successfully interfaced with their quantum networks. Their technology is charmingly simple." "Thank you, Jiho," Yuna said. "Please be gentle with their systems. We don't want to break anything." Admiral Vextar felt like his world was turning upside down. "Who are you people?" "We're humans," Yuna said as if it was the most obvious thing in the galaxy. "From Earth. You've been watching us for quite a while now." Within an hour, representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered on Vextar's ship. Some came in person, others appeared as holograms, and a few existed only as patterns of energy. The great conference room had been modified to accommodate beings that breathed different gases, lived at different temperatures, and existed in different dimensions. Ambassador Yuna stood before them all, completely calm. She had somehow produced detailed star charts of the entire galaxy, showing not just every inhabited system, but also the locations of the secret monitoring stations that had been watching Earth. "We've been aware of your surveillance for quite some time," she began. The translation systems worked perfectly, converting her words into hundreds of different languages simultaneously. "Your monitoring stations were detected by our scientists Inho and Nara roughly 2 centuries ago." A creature that looked like a giant crystal spoke up. This was Bexthul, the chief scientist of the ancient crystalline collective. "Impossible. Our concealment technology is perfect. No developing species has ever detected our stations." Yuna smiled politely. "With respect, your technology isn't as advanced as you think it is. We detected the quantum distortions from your cloaking fields within 6 months of developing proper quantum mechanics. After that, it was simply a matter of learning from you. Learning from us? This came from Fleet Commander Kyra of the Zephyrian Alliance, a species known for their military might. What do you mean? We watched you watching us, Jiho explained, manipulating his device to project three-dimensional images in the air. Every monitoring station, every scout ship, every surveillance drone. We studied your technology, learned your languages, and observed your politics. We've been preparing for this meeting for 200 years. The room erupted in shocked whispers and angry chittering sounds. Hundreds of species had thought they were secretly studying a primitive world. Instead, that primitive world had been studying them back. Admiral Vextar finally found his voice. But your civilization, your technology, we've been watching you build simple space stations and fusion reactors. We built what you expected to see, Yuna said simply. While you were watching our public space program launching rockets, our real scientists were developing technologies that work by manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself. Every fusion reactor you observed, every space station, every quantum computer, they were all performances, designed to make you think we were exactly as primitive as you expected. The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. If humans had been hiding their true capabilities for centuries, what else were they capable of? And if they could deceive the entire galaxy for so long, what did that mean for the balance of power? What do you want from us? Kyra demanded. Ambassador Yuna smiled warmly. To be friends, of course. We've been alone for so long. General Kolvax of the Krex Empire was not impressed. He stood on the command deck of his massive warship, looking at the small human vessels floating nearby. For 3,000 years, his people had been the strongest military force in the galaxy. No one challenged the Krex Empire and lived to tell about it. These humans are lying, he growled to his officers. No primitive species could develop such technology so quickly. They must have stolen it from someone else. His aide, a smaller Krex warrior, nodded eagerly. Should we attack them now, General? End this foolishness before it spreads. Kolvax considered this. The human ships were small and few in number. His fleet could destroy them easily. But something made him pause. The humans seemed too confident, too calm. It was like they wanted to be challenged. No, he said finally. If they're bluffing, let them prove it. I challenge them to demonstrate their technology. When they fail, the entire galaxy will see that the Krex Empire is still supreme. The message was sent across all communication channels. General Kolvax formally challenged humanity to prove their capabilities. If they were truly as advanced as they claimed, let them show it. Captain Sungji received the challenge aboard his research vessel, the Discovery. He read the message twice then smiled. They want a demonstration? Very well. Minji, find us a dead star system. Something dramatic. Chief Engineer Minji pulled up star charts on her screen. How about the Epsilon system? Dead red dwarf star, 3 lifeless rocky planets and plenty of asteroids. Nothing valuable, so we won't be destroying anything important. Perfect, Sungji said. Send the coordinates to the Krex fleet. Tell them to bring witnesses. Within days, hundreds of alien ships had gathered at the edge of the Epsilon system. Admiral Vextar was there, along with representatives from dozens of species. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the mighty Krex Empire faced these mysterious humans. The human fleet consisted of only 12 ships, all smaller than the average Krex destroyer. General Kolvax laughed when he saw them. 12 ships. I brought 200. This will be over quickly. But the humans weren't preparing for battle. Instead, they were setting up in a perfect formation around the dying star at the center of the system. Their ships moved with impossible precision, positioning themselves at exact points in space. Stellar Engineer Wanho stood on the bridge of his vessel, watching the preparations. His team was ready. Hiron monitored the star's quantum structure, while J1 calculated the energy requirements for what they were about to do. All ships report ready, Hiron announced. Beginning stellar revival in 3, 1, now, Wanho said calmly. What happened next was impossible according to every law of physics the galaxy knew. The dying red dwarf star, which had been barely glowing for millions of years, suddenly blazed back to brilliant life. But this wasn't just igniting fusion reactions. This was rebuilding the star's entire structure from the quantum level up. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the star grew brighter and larger, transforming from a dying ember into a vibrant yellow sun that bathed the entire system in warm light. Phase 1 complete, Wanho reported. Beginning planetary restoration. The 3 dead rocky planets in the system started to change. Atmospheres appeared from nothing, thick and rich with oxygen and water vapor. Oceans formed on their surfaces in minutes, not millions of years. Mountain ranges rose and fell as the humans casually reshaped entire continents. But they weren't done yet. As the alien fleets watched in amazement, the humans began seeding the planets with life. Forests appeared and spread across the continents. Vast grasslands rolled out like green carpets. Ice caps formed at the poles and weather patterns began to develop. How? Dr. Sora whispered aboard Admiral Vextar's ship. This is impossible. You can't create life from nothing. We're not creating it from nothing, Chief Science Officer Yunbai explained over the communication channels. Her voice was calm and patient, like a teacher explaining a simple concept to children. We're manipulating matter and energy at the quantum level, convincing atoms to arrange themselves into the patterns we need. On his ship, Taewon added, when your planet is dying from climate change and overpopulation, you learn to work with reality in creative ways. We didn't develop technology, we learned to treat physics like art. But the demonstration wasn't finished. The humans turned their attention to the asteroid belt orbiting the new star. Massive space rocks began to reshape themselves, flowing like liquid metal. Within hours they had become gleaming space stations, complete with gardens, living areas and docking bays. General Kovacs watched his instruments in disbelief. The energy readings were off the charts. The humans were manipulating matter on a scale that should have required the power output of entire civilizations. Yet they were doing it casually, like children playing with building blocks. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, our weapons would be useless against this. If they can reshape matter at will, they could turn our missiles into flowers or our armor into paper. Kovacs said nothing. For the first time in his long military career, he was looking at a force he could not defeat through violence. The humans had just created an entire solar system in a few hours, complete with living worlds and space habitats. What could his weapons do against beings who treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions? Order the fleet to withdraw, he said finally. Sir? His aide asked in confusion. You heard me. We're leaving. Send a message to the humans, the Krex Empire acknowledges their superiority. The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but Kovacs was a practical warrior. He knew when he was outmatched. The Krex Empire had ruled through strength for 3,000 years, but this was a kind of strength they could never match. As the mighty Krex war fleet retreated without firing a shot, news of the demonstration spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The species that had seemed primitive just weeks ago had just reshaped an entire star system as easily as rearranging furniture. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Jisoo stepped off the transport ship onto the crystal platform of Altair Prime, the home world of the Altarian people. The entire planet looked like it was made of living glass, beautiful towers that grew from the ground like trees, bridges that sparkled in the sunlight, and beings that looked like walking gemstones. Welcome Dr. Jisoo, said Veldar, the chief scientist of the Altarians. His crystal body chimed softly as he moved. We are eager to learn about your medical technologies. Jisoo smiled. 6 months ago, the Altarians had been dying from a plague that was slowly turning their crystal bodies to dust. Their doctors had tried everything but nothing worked. Then the humans arrived with ideas that seemed impossible. Your people's biology is fascinating, Jisoo said as they walked through the crystal gardens. You don't have cells like we do. Instead, you have quantum resonance patterns that hold your consciousness together. The plague was disrupting those patterns. Yes, Veldar said sadly. We thought it was incurable. Our greatest minds worked for centuries with no success. That's because you were trying to fight the plague directly, Jisoo explained. Instead, we taught your crystal matrix to remember its correct pattern. Now your bodies can heal themselves. It was working beautifully. Altarians who had been dying were now growing new crystal formations that were stronger than before. But the real breakthrough came when they combined human quantum medicine with Altarian crystal technology. Together, they had developed treatments that could heal almost any injury or disease. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, environmental specialist Chanwu was walking through what used to be a dead forest. The mycelial collective had accidentally poisoned their home world centuries ago, and nothing would grow there anymore. The fungal beings who lived there had been slowly starving. It's incredible, said Sporana, a mycelial leader whose body looked like a walking mushroom. In just 3 months you've brought our world back to life. Chanwu knelt down and touched the soil. It was rich and dark now, full of nutrients. Your people understand soil better than anyone in the galaxy, he said. You just needed to think bigger. Instead of trying to clean the poison, We taught the Earth to digest it and turn it into food for plants. The results were amazing. Dead worlds were becoming gardens. Poisoned oceans were becoming clean. Species that had been fighting over the last few habitable planets suddenly found themselves with more space than they knew what to do with. Back on the central space station that served as the galaxy's meeting place, Ambassador Salmon was giving a tour to a group of young aliens from dozens of different species. The Interspecies Research Academy had become the most popular school in the galaxy. Today, Engineer Gunwoo will show you basic matter manipulation, Salmon announced to the excited students. A young Krex warrior raised his clawed hand. But our teachers said matter manipulation was impossible. Gunwoo smiled. That's what everyone used to think. But impossible just means we haven't figured out how to do it yet. He picked up a piece of metal from his desk. Watch this. The metal began to flow like water, reshaping itself into a perfect flower. Then it became a bird, then a tree, then a small spaceship. The students gasped in amazement. How? Asked a crystal student from Altair. Matter is just energy arranged in patterns, Gunwoo explained. Once you understand the patterns, you can change them. It's like learning to draw but with atoms instead of pencils. These schools were changing everything. Young minds from across the galaxy were learning to think in ways their parents never could. Ancient problems that had seemed unsolvable were being solved by students who had been taught that nothing was truly impossible. The political changes were even more dramatic. The mineral wars that had raged between the Stonewalker clans and the Crystal Hegemony for over 1,000 years ended when human terraforming specialist Eugene showed both sides something amazing. Why fight over existing minerals when you can make new ones? She asked the war leaders who had gathered on a neutral space station. With a few simple gestures, she created an entire asteroid made of pure crystal, then another one made of rare metals. You can make anything? Asked Rocktar, the Stonewalker chieftain. Pretty much, Eugene said cheerfully. Scarcity is just a design problem. There's enough space and energy in the universe to give everyone whatever they need. Transportation coordinator Kaiwan was solving similar problems with trade disputes. Species that had fought for centuries over shipping routes found themselves with instant transportation networks that could move goods anywhere in the galaxy in seconds. But in the dark spaces between stars, something ancient was stirring. The Void Collective had existed for millions of years, hidden in dimensions where normal matter couldn't reach them. They were the secret rulers of the galaxy, controlling civilizations through carefully managed scarcity and conflict. Archon Nephius floated in the darkness, its form made of pure dark energy. These humans are dangerous, it told its council. They give away power freely. They solve problems instead of managing them. They make abundance possible. Should we contact them? Asked another void being. Perhaps we can control them as we have controlled others. No, Nephius said coldly. They cannot be controlled. They must be destroyed before they teach the galaxy that our power is unnecessary. For millions of years, the Void Collective had maintained their grip on galactic civilization by ensuring that resources were always scarce, that conflicts always continued, and that no species ever became too powerful. They were the invisible hand that kept everyone fighting each other instead of growing too strong. But humans were ruining everything. They were teaching species to cooperate instead of compete. They were solving problems instead of managing them. They were making the galaxy's ancient power structure obsolete. The Void Collective began to prepare for war. The attack came without any warning. Director Sunho was in his laboratory on Kepler 442b, studying samples from a newly discovered life form, when everything simply stopped existing. One moment he was there with his team of 10,000 researchers, including agricultural specialist Boyoung who was working on new farming techniques. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where their entire colony had been. Across human space, 17 colonies vanished in the same instant. Not destroyed, not blown up. They simply ceased to exist as if they had never been built at all. Fleet Admiral Hagen received the emergency reports aboard his flagship. The readings made no sense. The colonies hadn't been attacked with normal weapons. They had been erased from reality itself, leaving behind areas of space where nothing could exist. Sir, his communications officer said with a shaking voice, we're receiving a message. It's coming from nowhere. Empty space. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and ancient. Humans, you have disrupted the natural order. We are the Void Collective. We have maintained balance in this galaxy for millions of years. Your interference ends now. Hagen had never heard of the Void Collective, but he understood the threat. How many more colonies are they targeting? All of them, sir. Our sensors are detecting massive dark matter signatures moving toward every human settlement. For the first time since humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy, they were facing an enemy they couldn't simply outthink or outbuild. The Void Collective existed in the spaces between normal matter, using weapons that could erase things from existence itself. But humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology. It was their ability to make friends and work together. Within hours, Fleet Admiral Hagen was coordinating with allies from across the galaxy. General Kolvax of the Krex Empire, the same warrior who had once challenged humanity to prove their power, now offered his entire fleet. "These shadow beings have been manipulating us for millennia," he growled. "They kept us fighting each other while they controlled everything from the darkness. It's time for payback." Commander Yancio worked with Zephyrian tactical specialists who knew more about dimensional warfare than anyone else. "The Void Collective attacks from spaces between normal dimensions," explained war leader Ziwaxera. "But if we can track their dimensional signatures, we can follow them home," Yancio finished. "Even if it means entering dark matter space itself." Research Director Dong Hyun collaborated with the Ancient Crystalline Collective to build sensor networks that could detect dark matter movements. The crystal beings had existed for millions of years and remembered stories about the mysterious force that sometimes made civilizations rise or fall for no apparent reason. "They were always there," Velder explained as his crystal body hummed with quantum calculations. "In the shadows, making sure no one became too powerful, too peaceful, too united. They needed us to stay divided and weak." The preparation took weeks. Captain Juno of the exploration vessel Unity led the combined fleet toward the edge of known space, where the barrier between normal matter and dark matter was thinnest. Navigation specialist Sarung had calculated the exact point where they could punch through into the Void Collective's hidden realm. "Are you sure about this?" Admiral Vextar asked over the communication channel. His Altarian fleet was part of the massive Alliance force. "No one has ever entered dark matter space and returned. No one has ever tried with this many friends," Juno replied confidently. The breakthrough was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Reality twisted around them as hundreds of ships from dozens of species punched through the barrier into a realm where the normal laws of physics didn't apply. They found themselves in a space filled with structures that hurt to look at, cities and fleets made of pure dark energy that had existed for millions of years. The Void Collective's forces were waiting for them. Dark matter weapons that could erase entire fleets opened fire immediately. Several ships simply vanished, their crews forgotten as if they had never existed. But then Chief Reality Engineer Kangmin and Quantum Theorist Yurin did something that even the ancient Void Collective had never seen before. Working together from their research ship, they began to manipulate probability itself. "What are you doing?" Yurin asked as reality started to shift around them. "Making their certain victory uncertain," Kangmin replied, his hands dancing over controls that existed in 17 dimensions at once. "If they can erase things from existence, we can make non-existence impossible." The effect was immediate and devastating for the Void Collective. Their weapons that always hit their targets suddenly started missing. Their hiding places in dark matter space became visible to normal sensors. Their million-year advantage in dark energy manipulation became meaningless as humans rewrote the rules of causality itself. Archon Nethuss, the leader of the Void Collective, watched in horror as its ancient empire crumbled. "Impossible," it whispered as its own dark matter weapons turned against its forces. "We control the fundamental forces of reality." "Not anymore," Captain Juno said over the communication channel. "Reality belongs to everyone now." The battle was over in hours. The Void Collective, which had secretly controlled galactic civilization for millions of years, simply surrendered. They had never faced a force that could make their power irrelevant. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed completely. The Galactic Confederation became the Galactic Cooperative, with Mincio as the first human elected as Galactic Coordinator. Her first law was simple: all advanced technologies must be shared freely with everyone. Years later, Admiral Vextar, now old and serving as Director of Galactic Historical Archives, watched young students from dozens of species learning together in the academies that now existed on every world. Human instructors like Sioyan and Jaiwan taught alongside alien professors, sharing knowledge that made the impossible routine. "We thought we were watching children playing in the dirt," Vextar said into his final log entry. "We never realized they were building a ladder to the stars, and when they finished climbing they reached back down to help the rest of us up." The galaxy was no longer silent. It sang with the sound of cooperation and discovery.